Right, let's get started. So first of all, I'd like to say welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Alex and I'm the MSP manager here at Redsift. It's also my pleasure to introduce you to Neil, our channel director for EMEA, who's also on this webinar today. So on the agenda today, we'll be discussing the following: the MSP industry today, why MSPs being targeted by cyber criminals, phishing and BEC attacks, SEG is not enough, what is DMARC, the benefits of DMARC, introduction to OnDMARC, the 5 steps to success, investigate, why Redsift, and the Q&A session at the end. Just wanted to let you know as well, there is a question and answers box at the top of the screen. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to leave your questions in there and we'll get that answered for you. This last year stands apart as a year where the entire world shared a crisis unparalleled in recent memory. Technology infrastructure was tested to the limit. MSPs around the world went above and beyond to support their customers as they built their new normal. So despite these huge challenges, many organizations remained focused on core technology priorities. Cybersecurity continues to be top of mind for nearly every participant. And as a result of recent studies, MSPs are increasingly worried they will be the target of an attack in the next 6 months. As a result, more MSPs are planning further investment in cybersecurity during the next year in an effort to reduce the risk. An issue that has been widely recognized within multiple industries is that organizations lack the in-house skills needed to properly deal with cybersecurity challenges. This is helping to drive the growing adoption of outsourced security, giving MSPs the opportunity to build additional revenue streams and deepen their relationships with existing customers. SMBs are likely to consider using an MSP or switching MSPs to find the right cybersecurity solution. This sends a clear message to many MSPs that they must raise their understanding across the entire cybersecurity discipline. Those MSPs that take those steps will be strongly positioned to capitalize on a post-pandemic economic recovery, emerging from the experience stronger, with customers better prepared for the cybersecurity challenges that lie ahead. What is worrying, though, is that only a small fraction of SMBs talk to MSPs about cybersecurity, and that is almost always after they have fallen victim to a cyber attack. The MSPs that are proactive and willing to kickstart that conversation before an attack actually happens to their clients is more likely to stay ahead of the competition and keep the customers happy. Now, why are MSPs being targeted by cyber criminals? MSPs serve numerous clients who entrust them with the keys to their kingdom, as they say. MSP infrastructures are designed to provide technicians with easy, direct access to those clients so they can hop on and off to troubleshoot, perform maintenance, deploy software, etc. It's easy to understand why cyber criminals find those capabilities incredibly appealing. Compromise just one MSP and they can find themselves with access to a score of potential victims. Now, in addition, because of the core offering MSPs provide is keeping their clients' network secure and running smoothly, the threat of client-facing disruption and damage makes MSPs prime extortion targets. So, for example, if you woke up one morning to find all your clients have been infected with ransomware, how much would you be willing to pay to make the problem go away? Paying ransom is never advisable, though, not simple, not a sure thing. But you can see why attackers may believe infecting MSPs and their customers give them more leverage than usual. Now let's look at some recent statistics to prove that phishing and BEC attacks are not being adequately addressed by the existing technology most commonly used. So 0.2% of spam emails contain malware. This speaks to the point I was making about SEGs, an obsession with stopping attachment as a distraction for the most likely avenue of an attack, BEC and cleverly engineered phishing emails. The next one is the 7 minutes is the average length of a boutique phishing attack. When attackers are constantly regrouping, tiring a tactic, if it doesn't work, try something else. Then that's where these filter-based solutions fall down. In fact, I doubt you could even add a block rule within the 7 minutes it takes for them to try again. Today's most successful attackers aren't blasting out huge mass mailing lists with a bland email. They're targeting a smaller group, hence the boutique part, with thoughtful content that entices in the interaction. 68% of phishing emails seen by Gmail today are completely new variations. Now, I don't want to label to the point that, I hope it's becoming clear, phishing attacks are more sophisticated and ever evolving than people give them credit for. I'm not looking to, fearmonger with these stats, simply share that, any long held beliefs that it's the coining in the wrong BEC is really big business. 50% of network compromise attacks started with a phishing email. Now, network compromise is rightly a concern for security organizations. All that sensitive corporate and customer information suddenly vulnerable to theft. So it's important to focus on closing down the cause of 1 out of every 2 network compromise attacks. And the last one here is that £54,000 is the average amount lost in a single phishing email. What I wanted to do here is make it relatable. Often when you talk to, other cybersecurity vendors, for example, they will quote these astronomical figures into the millions of dollars when it comes to the average loss arising from phishing emails. However, the reality is that these big frauds do happen. The average loss is more reasonable, around £54,000, as I mentioned. And I think it's way easier to see this happening within your organization or your clients as well. SEG is not enough. Now, one thing I want to clear up is the misconception that having SEG, which is the secure email gateway, is enough, because it's not. There is a lot of confusion in the marketplace about the different types of BEC, the business email compromise attacks, and what technology can stop what phishing emails. Modern attacks are easily able to bypass legacy filters like SEGs. And this is because they're focused on looking for what is contained in an email. Like, for example, malware, file attachments, etc., instead of validating the sender's identity. If you use these key signals in the DNS, like DMARC, you can determine if the sender is truly who they are purporting to be. Those who are faking it are highly likely to trick and defraud. So good cybersecurity is about taking and synthesizing multiple signals of intent to come to an informed decision as to what to do next. So this leads me on to what is DMARC. So DMARC stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting and Conformance. It's an email authentication protocol designed to give email domain owners the ability to protect their domain from unauthorized use, commonly known as email spoofing. The purpose and primary outcome of implementing DMARC is to protect a domain from being used in an email compromise attack, phishing emails as well, email scams, and other cyber threat activities. Now, once a DMARC policy is published in the DNS, any receiving email server can authenticate the incoming email based on the instructions published by the domain owner within the DNS entry. If the email passes the authentication, it will be delivered and it can be trusted. If the email fails the check, depending on the instructions held within the DMARC record, the email could be delivered, quarantined, or rejected. Many organizations are afraid of DMARC because it appears to be complex. However, it's not if you have the right tools. Providing managed services around DMARC enforcement and management could be a really, really great additional revenue for MSPs. Now, what are the benefits of DMARC? First of all, securing your domain and protecting your brand. DMARC allows you to secure your domain by putting a policy in place to reject unauthorized senders. Enforcing DKIM and SPF to ensure your messages are not modified along the way or only sent from authenticated servers. The next one is delivering insights. DMARC will provide reports of senders sending on your domain's behalf. You can also control your domain sending services by enforcing a DMARC policy and ensuring your assets are correctly configured with SPF and DKIM. The next one is improving deliverability. Correctly configured authenticated services with SPF and DKIM will improve deliverability into receiving users' mailboxes. Now I want to introduce you to OnDMARC. OnDMARC is the product we're best known for, with clients using it to block damaging emails from going straight to their customers, to their suppliers and other key contacts by getting their DMARC policy to P=reject quickly and effectively. Most notably, our AI-powered platform simplifies the process of email authentication into step-by-step instructions, enabling users to get protected quickly. Our clients' average time to protection is just 4 to 8 weeks, compared to months, if that's all, with other vendors. Once set up, users receive specific alerts of any DMARC changes that you should implement. Best of all, we give you the tools to confidently secure your domain, replacing expensive consultants with an intuitive self-service solution. With unique tools like Investigate, which I'll go on later, you can instantly see the result of any changes you're making to your email setup and remain unconcerned that you might be inadvertently stopping your emails from working. Now, I think the underlying theme which makes our DMARC product easier to use than so many others on the market is the approach to adding context to every step of the journey. Not only through surfacing insight into the reputation of senders, why an email failed DMARC, or how to configure a particular email source, do we enable our clients to make smarter decisions more quickly. Now, obviously, if you want to see more of the innovative features in action, such as dynamic DMARC, which enables you to simplify SPF management and overcome the 10 lookup limit, also our APIs and the single sign-on functionality, I'd be more than happy to show you in a live demo. But from now, let's move on to the next slide, which is the 5 steps to success. So the reports is knowing your senders. Then you will be marking your assets, which is building an inventory of your known senders. The next one is email sources. You will know your current assets configurations and the traffic. The next one is actions, which are the actions needed to be taken from your assets. And investigate, which instantly tests your configuration changes. The above 5 is also the 5 steps to the policy of reject, which you will be doing for your clients. Investigate. Especially for MSPs, why is this useful? First of all, it allows the customer to get immediate insight into the authentication setup of their email sending services, including DMARC, SPF, DKIM, TLS, and FCR DNS. You can also perform an unlimited number of tests in a single day to check the configuration of your email assets and sending services without having to wait for DMARC reports. Customers can compare their emails against a number of compliance profiles. And ultimately, this all speeds up the time to reaching the P=reject status. Now, the step-by-step process of this is, first of all, you will send an email from the sending service you want to configure. Then you will wait from 5 to 10 seconds for the email to be received in the Investigate inbox. Then you'll open the email to get an insight into your current service authentication setup, and then you adjust your setup if necessary and repeat the process as necessary. Why Redshift? So our funding mission is to democratize the technology essential to cybersecurity. And it's an ethos that informs our everyday, whether we're prioritizing roadmap decisions or making UI improvements. We're consciously making choices that open up technology to people. We're also making the choice to focus on aspects of cybersecurity that have the biggest impact. In fact, you may even hear us talk about nothing niche, which is why we started by looking at email authentication and anti-phishing technologies. The Redshift solution platform is built on a global IBM soft layer infrastructure with 99.999 uptime and ISO 27001 certification, making us fully GDPR compliant and reflecting our no compromise approach to security. If there are any questions, please may you put them in the questions box. I'll be more than happy to help out.
Hi, this is Neil. So there was a question for Brian about secure email gateways, and of course, OnDMARC works with any secure email gateway, and it's very important to point out that in terms of a secure email gateway, this is why there is a gap in that posture. The email gateways themselves don't tend to fix DMARC records. It's a manual configuration process. Whether you're using a traditional email gateway provider, security email provider, or looking to use Office 365 and levels of Microsoft Defender in that security posture for your customers, there is that DMARC gap, and of course OnDMARC being a SaaS platform and existing outside in the cloud, and really just looking to configure how things work on a customer's domain, works very well alongside all email gateways. And in fact, if we were really looking at the ideal kind of profile of a managed service partner to be talking to, it's people who understand DNS configuration and email gateways, and probably already have something in place, because you'll know better than anybody that there is a kind of a gap there that needs to be filled. So hopefully that kind of answers that question. And I have had a question about pricing and how pricing actually works. So I don't think we have a slide on it. Alex can correct me if that's not the case, but licensing itself is based on a very simplified per user model. So as a managed service provider controlling a bunch of customers and a bunch of domains within that, the licensing simply works as an aggregation of all of those user counts. So, as we'll explain in a bit, going into your management console, the multi-tenancy bit, and adding customers, you will be invited to then add the user count for each of those customers. And on a monthly basis, Redshift will run a report based on that usage, and there'll be a bill pop out in the following month based on the number of users that you kind of have against you. It's based on a sliding scale. Pricing is available from us directly, if you rather than us broadcasting it too heavily, because it can dictate as well. All we offer really is a buy price for an MSP, a per user basis, which we think is the simplest way of doing it. Obviously, volume discounts typically apply. We can send those information to anyone who wants to explore that. And in terms of how this is sold out from your perspective as a service provider, then that's a kind of your call, right? So how much value you want to kind of try and put onto the service, whether it's around offering levels of domain protection and digital brand protection or something like that, or whether it's something more simplistic around DMARC reporting and being able to show reports and results to any given customer about their exposure to spoofing via the DMARC record. That's a kind of your call. But we set the pricing, we set it so it's very competitive and very compelling in terms of being monthly billed as well. So hopefully that kind of makes everyone feel at ease with a pricing model. But like I say, more information will be available after this session. So a couple of questions in. We'll cover the DMARC implementation around SPF and DKIM. But first, there's just a quick one around how long does it take to get to DMARC enforcement, so a policy of reject? And that is the old, how long is a piece of string? There's a number of factors involved in that. So what we do through the platform itself is be able to find and locate sending services that are acting and potentially sending spurious emails on behalf of a customer's domain across the internet. And through a period that can be weeks, it could be longer, we gradually start to easily and simply turn off sending services that aren't recognized by that customer. And I suppose then you could say, well, if you've got a relatively simple setup, you know exactly what sending services are acting on your behalf. You have Office 365, perhaps, a CRM system and one marketing email system, and that's it. You can identify those very quickly. The way that OnDMARC works as a platform, which we'll hopefully see in a minute, you can really identify simply and easily where those bad sending services are, which ones are the ones you need to turn off, and gradually by kind of turning these things off gets you nearer and nearer to that part of compliance. So it's important from a customer's perspective to understand that it can be quite quick, but on the flip side of that, it's also worth pointing out that it can be something that needs to be taken carefully. A lot of people are fearful of amending too much, of maybe it might stop sending legitimate sending services, but the program is designed in such a way that nothing's ever permanent. unless you keep it so. You can always change things back if needs be. And you can always run checks as well through tools like Investigate, which I think we are covering, which will then also be able to tell you whether or not emails are getting across the internet, when you have turned these things off. So it can take, like I said, can take weeks. We worked with a global organization recently that's in the public sector. And they went to reject within 2 weeks, and I think had something like 154 domains that needed configuration. It was a lot of support, it was a lot of time that went into it, but it can be done. We're optimistic that from a managed service perspective, we're hopefully not dealing with high volumes of domains, and potentially not in the millions of emails every week. So it should be a simpler and quicker process to get customers to reject. And then in terms of needing DMARC, if you've already implemented SPF and DKIM, it depends how it's been implemented, I suppose. We really need to be looking at what that configuration looks like and how static it may be, or whether it can be fluid, and whether there's any changes to any sending services, or and how that's kind of being managed. The interface around OnDMARC makes it such that you can easily see things like the DKIM and the DMARC record itself. It works in such a way that a lot of the changes can be done dynamically by the click of a button, and can monitor for any changes. So it simplifies that management process quite heavily. The other changes that can occur with adding new sending services, or potentially when an individual, maybe on behalf of the company without telling the IT department, adds some mail sending services, that can affect the things like the SPF count itself, or it can be recognized as an invalid sending service. Both of these things can really impact email deliverability. If you're using this as a kind of a manual process of looking at DKIM and SPF, then that can present its own problems and challenges. It's much better to have that window visibility tool in play, so that when things do change, you can easily see what's actually being changed, and what you can then do about it to make sure that legitimate stuff is still passing and illegitimate stuff is still being blocked. So, naturally on a Redshift webinar, I'm always going to say that you probably should use the Redshift tool to kind of keep monitoring, managing things. But hopefully that's reasonably okay. But I think I would invite any question like that to have a further discussion after this presentation.
If there are any other questions, if you could type them in the questions box. But if you have any other questions after this webinar, you've got my contact details on the screen. I'll be more than happy to set up a call and do anything that I can to help with this. But thank you very much for joining this webinar today, and we look forward to seeing you soon.